Good afternoon. Welcome to my presentation. My name is Michael Naranjo. I'm going to be discussing autism spectrum disorder, and we want to know um, if we can get high quality images without the use of sedation to keep the patients still. The name of the article, the exact name of the article is Methods for Acquiring MRI Data in the Children with Autism Spectrum Disorder and Intellectual Impairment Without the Use of Sedation. So that's going to be the topic for this presentation. The outline for this presentation is we're going to discuss what the definition of autism spectrum disorder is, so we can have a better understanding of the study and what some of the patients may or may not go through. What are some of the symptoms of autism spectrum disorder? Some of the symptoms to be recognized. I know some symptoms can overlap with other disorders, but for this particular one, there are very specific symptoms that need to be recognized. What is the purpose of this study? Why was it done? Why is it so important? Okay, so that's going to be discussed, and also what was some of the methodology used to perform the actual study? Um, and that's going to be explained in greater detail in just a few moments. And also the results. Okay, what did they find? And last but not least, the strengths and weaknesses of the study. Well, let's look at the definition of autism spectrum disorder. Quote unquote, it's to describe individuals with specific combination of impairments in social communication and repetitive behaviors, highly restricted interests and or sensory behaviors beginning early in life. Um, you're going to notice that there's going to be some restricted, I'm going to discuss what a restricted interest is. I'm also going to mention what repetitive behaviors are, and you're going to see in the study that this will be mentioned once again. Okay, let's look at some of the symptoms. Difficulty interpreting what others are thinking or feeling. They may not necessarily be in sync with how you feel. Okay, this is going to link to facial expressions. They're not going to interpret any facial expressions, like when you're happy, you smile; when you're sad, you frown. Okay, they may misinterpret that in another way. They're not going to understand or have very difficulty interpreting body language and social cues, like when to end a conversation, when to continue, things like that. Okay. Difficulty regulating emotion. This is an important one. They may not have any self-regulation in terms of controlling how they feel. They may have outbursts if things are disrupted in their daily routine life. Trouble keeping up with the conversation. There may be some lag time. You could be several steps ahead, but they're still several steps behind trying to figure out what it is that you're trying to say. And in addition, they're going to have a trouble um, keeping up with your facial expressions and how you're feeling during the conversation. So all that's going to be lagged or difficult to interpret for the patient. Inflection does not match or reflect feelings. Difficulty maintaining the natural give and take of a conversation. So there may be some resistance in some of the things you say. In a normal conversation, there's usually some wiggle room. Okay. You may or may not disagree, but generally things don't get out of order for the most part. So they may be very regimented and take things literally. Prone to monologues on their favorite subject. They could go off on a tangent discussing what their favorite thing to do is. So that's going to make the conversation kind of broken and not going to flow as fluently as you like. Tendency to engage in repetitive or routine behaviors. Now, if these behaviors are broken, they will tend to have an outburst or to tend to lash out. And I can think of this. I can't help think about the movie Rain Man, where Dustin Hoffman plays a idiot savant, and his brother Tom Cruise has discovered his brother for the first time, trying to make connection with him, and realizes that when he breaks his brother's routines, Dustin Hoffman kind of goes into a rage and um, expresses his anger in a non-traditional way, okay, by banging on his head or just yelling and screaming repetitively. So I just can't help think about that movie. Now, this doesn't take place in this study, but it's just an example of what a routine behavior is and when it's broken. So they may watch a program every single day, certain time. When that doesn't happen, they tend to get a little emotional. Okay. Also, again, they're only going to participate in restricted range of activities. Again, these are the activities that are their favorite, what their favorite things are, or favorite things to do. So they generally keep that very narrow, very limited, um, compared to a wide variety of activities. And again, strict routines, outbursts when things change. Okay? Okay, so what's the purpose of this study? Well, um, there are several purposes. MRIs have been used for a very, very long time in evaluating the neuropathology of autism spectrum disorder, known as ASD, which I'll be using that acronym. It's a very challenging problem because these studies are very limited. They're not done very frequently, and more studies need to be done for the more advanced levels of autism spectrum disorder. So those studies are very limited or have not been done quite frequently in that range. Um, so, and one of the challenges to get MRI images, high quality MRI images, without using sedation to keep the patient still. And many of the people that have autism spectrum disorder have IQs. Well, excuse me, many of the studies were focused on normal range, in the normal range, IQs in the normal range, which the normal range is about 100, 102, maybe plus or minus a couple of points. And many of these had intellectual disabilities in the 50 to 70% range. Okay. Um, and a lot of and within that percentage range, there were mild to profound levels of intellectual disability. Some parents may have reservation in letting their child perform the study because there is a slight risk. The study did not mention what the slight risk is, but that made parents very hesitant, so that keeps the study very limited. So that poses a major challenge in itself. What is the hypothesis? Okay, it is feasible to acquire high-quality images in school-age children with autism spectrum disorder and intellectual impairment without the use of sedation. Okay, um, so the sedation part is to keep the patient still. This study was done without the use of that, and you're going to see the results were quite surprising. All right, the methodology is a little involved, so I'll try to summarize it as quickly as I can for time purposes. The children were enrolled in the U.S. Davis Mind Institute Autism Phenome Project, known as APP. The initial enrollment was 2 to 3 to 5 years old, but the current study focused on 9 to 13 years old. Okay. So the patients were the same, they were just an older range. Okay. And then the autism, the measurement, the tools used to measure autism spectrum disorder, okay, was as you can see, it's listed right here, the Autism Diagnostic Observation Schedule, generic, the Autism Diagnostic Interview, revised, the Mullen Scales of Early Development was used for developmental ability, and that was used as well. And also the scales /2, known as the DAS/2 and the ADOS, were used as for diagnostic purposes as well. Now, the patients were placed in an MRI. We think an MRI, you think of a big machine, a kind of circular machine with the hole. That hole is the bore. That's where the patients were placed in. And there was a behavioral analysis present, okay, to interview the patients, interview the patients about their skill level and ability to follow directions during the study. okay, and also a preference assessment, okay, to ask what their favorite activities are and preferred materials. In this particular study, two speakers were used in the board, and then they were projected onto a screen, okay, and the movie or the music, which is the videos that were chosen by the patients based on their favorite activities. The headphones were used to capture that. You know, the headphones were on the patients, and there was a camera outside of the board. Okay, so and then task analysis was used to for behavior in the boar to see if they're staying still, if they're making noises, or if they're talking, things like that. Um, and all the precautions were made prior to the scans. If they had any metal, that would be a safety concern since it's a magnetic resonance imaging machine. Also, the visual timer was also used to keep track of the time, and also the behavior analysis will keep an eye on any movement from the patient during the actual scan. Okay, that's really important. That's the main hypothesis. Can we get quality images, okay, with them lying still without any sedation? Uh, Summary of the results: that the children were diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. The developmental quotient, developmental ability, the quotient IQ was about less than 70, and the time of the scans, okay, at the time of the scans, the IQs were about 54.1. That was the average. And the standard deviation was an average of 12.1. And the children, 4 out of the 13 children had, I'm sorry, 4 individuals had normal IQs. A normal IQ we considered about 100 plus or minus a couple of points. So the average IQ was 102.2 with a standard deviation of 7.5. And acquiring high quality images was 100% successful. And the acquiring of high quality images were 9.4%. Okay. Um, the significance of the study. Okay. Yes, it's important to evaluate children at all levels. Again, the ones that were not studied was the ones with the severe cases of autism spectrum disorder. Okay, and then you have parents that are kind of resistant of this study. Okay, so, but based on that, um, getting high quality images is definitely possible, and it was possible based on this study. Um, so the use of sedation is not necessary. High quality images can be done without that procedure. Okay, so I hope that you found this project to be very, very informative and very helpful. Um, I hope that it was clear enough for you to understand and comprehend the procedure of this study. I know the study was a little involved, a little complex, so but the breaking down of the study component by component hopefully made it easier for you to visualize the study and visualize what the patients are going through and how difficult it must be for them to be stuck in this MRI that's so claustrophobic and very challenging to stay still. But it was possible, and the hypothesis was in fact to be proven to be true and not false. Okay, well, thank you very much for listening, and I hope you have a great rest of the day.